Sure. It's a real interesting time, I think. Part of this came out of a discussion I had with Justin Smith, who's the newish still CEO of Bloomberg Media, moving over there from Atlantic Media a little more than a year ago. And having built Quartz, which is still a very good model as a business news product, they took advantage at Atlantic of the mobile renaissance as it was happening 2012, 2013, and the growth of native advertising. And as he's looking forward now, he's saying, okay, really interesting time. And I was talking to him about the Bloomberg.com redesign and what it meant. And I read a lot of stuff out there talking about the design itself. And I wanted to hear about the strategy under it. And the strategy under it, he said, is based on three big phenomenon, and that is the fact that millennial readers are coming of age. This is a generation that's bigger than the baby boomers. It's been out there for a long time, but it is getting older, and it is becoming a news reading generation. And all the data shows they read a lot of news, but they read it differently than their elder generations read it. That's number one. Number two is mobile itself. So mobile was ascending when Quartz was being built, but this year, most news companies, US and Europe, are crossing over that line. More than 50% of the page views are coming from mobile, most of them from smartphones. We think this will be 75% by 2018, 2019. And then you look at the third phenomenon, which is social, largely Facebook, but also Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest are supplanting Google as a way of finding stories, the whole discovery question. Everything that we see of, read this story, read that story, they still come by email in our inbox, but they have come increasingly by Twitter and Facebook as well. He said if you put together these three phenomena, what happens is it opens up a field of new readers to be brought in. Essentially that habits, such as they are in the digital world, and we've been in this world for 20 years now, are partly formed. They're not as entrenched or hardened as in a print world or broadcast world, but they're being formed. And these three factors are newly opening up people to the discovery of new stories. And so if you're running Bloomberg.com or a newspaper website or a TV website, you have a lot more potential readers at this point, we could say 2015, maybe 2018, than you may have several years in the future and than you had in 2012. Well, it's interesting, and I think, those of us came out of the print world, we look at transition points and try to make sense of transition points. And I think what I'm getting used to is the fact that there are no transition points because there's not really an end here. And so the turbulence of ownership is certainly true, but we've had turbulent ownership now really since the recession. In companies like the Tribune, there's a tragic comedy practically of what happened there. And Digital First Media, I mean, whoever buys that company, there's a good chance they're not going to own it 5 years from now. So we may be seeing continual disruption in ownership. I think the way I look at the world kind of circa 2015 where we are, is there are essentially two kinds of owners. There are owners who believe they can manage decline, declining industry, no growth since 2007. They can make money in that industry. Let's remember this industry is profitable, they can make money, you continue to cut costs, you consolidate staff, build in more technology, and you make those profits. And you can do that for 3 to 5 years. You can pay off the cost of buying a company and you make money. You leave with a smaller company and and less civic involvement, but you've had a company. There are those companies. They are less interesting. They are less important to the future of journalism, and I fear there are too many of them. On the other hand, and very optimistically, we have people like Jeff Bezos, John Henry, Glenn Taylor, three of 424 American billionaires who have bought newspapers in the last 2 years. And in each of those cases, they're saying, okay, I get it. Short term, this is a world of pain. There's not a lot of growth here, but I unquestionably understand what this newspaper company does in print and digital for its readers. That's still as important as it was. I'm going to invest for that long term, believing that a strong content business, that increasingly digital, will do okay as a business. And so that long-term investment, part of it driven by profit motive, but long-term profit motive, and part of it driven by civic interest, is what we need to see more of. There are, with these other, at least 421 other billionaires, I could see more of them buying. If any are watching, I can put you in touch with the right people. But otherwise, there are plenty of people with only tens and hundreds of millions who can make a difference in this atmosphere. And I think this essential belief in what journalism does for communities is something that we have to see more of. And we were never about tonnage, we were about mass, but mass really being a strongly part of people's lives. It's like, I think I use this metaphor in Atlanta, it's like if you were standing in the middle of any of the cities that you sell newspapers in, and you're standing on a street corner and a wind comes up and a piece of newsprint comes by and you grab it, that on the internet would make you a unique visitor. But we know that in the newspapers, I don't even think ABC or AAM would count that these days.
Yeah.
Put this stuff together and you say, okay, it's not unique visitors, because most unique visitors throw off relatively little financial value in terms of advertising. There's a little, but not much. The main value for especially local media companies is in their direct relationships with their main readers, and of course with their main local advertisers. And so I think the relationships, the number one thing I would focus on is reinforcing the relationships they are there, expanding the relationships, very importantly, not just maintaining, which too many newspaper companies have looked at doing, but expanding those relationships in ways that digital media now allows us to do, and not for altruism, but being able to monetize that greater engagement. So I think that it is a relatively smaller number, not a mass number, but a relatively smaller number than what Google and Facebook are applying, that will create the revenue streams that will support these news businesses going forward. The reason for that is that I think when you look at how the world's unfolded, as a surprise to many of us, and these companies like Google and Facebook are getting 5 and 6 hours of time on site per month. Newspaper companies, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, that kind of thing on average, right? That we've had a whole flip in really 10 years of what's mass media and what's niche media. In a world that is becoming mainly digital advertising oriented, the competitive advantages of newspapers are relatively few compared to the advertising behemoths of Google and Facebook and about another 5 to 8 companies. That doesn't mean at all that newspaper companies, small or large, shouldn't compete, but it means that we have to understand what our place is in that pantheon and how, especially the technology, ad technology has forever changed the nature of selling and buying. Yeah, look at the last 5 years in terms of circulation pricing and all. 20%, 50%, 100% up in a number of places. And amazingly, we've got 80 to 90% of people that are staying with it. This is incredible loyalty to pay twice as much for a product that in most cases is diminished. So that loyalty is there, but all we have done, and I still feel like it's a we, all we have done is essentially gone to the same people with the same product, sometimes diminished, and said, pay us more. Let's do more for these people who are really into news, into civic values, into city life, entertainment, guides, and get more from them by providing more and different and niche products and services. The main operation really has 3 kinds of competencies. It has editorial, it has sales, it has technology. And so thinking of it that way, as opposed to the way we think about it as editorial, advertising, circulation, finance. I still remember the floors at the Pioneer Press in St. Paul. So big, it's making so much money, everybody had their own floor. You didn't need it, right? Finance and HR. But if we think about it in terms of sales, content creation, and technology, then what kind of skills are needed in each one? And the technology ones are obviously very important. Should the print newsroom be separate from the digital newsroom? It seems like a really stupid question now, but all the years that companies spent talking about that, we're moving back and forth. Now the question is, and I don't know where you guys are at with this, but I think it's a really important question, is how much technology is integrated with the newsroom and how much it's integrated with sales and how it's integrated. And the smartest companies, and there's no, like in all this, there's no golden formula, but you're both smart. You have smart people working for you. It's kind of like, what are we trying to do every day? So sometimes people need to work alone or they need to work with other technologists. But could we speed up the process of really creating better smartphone products or the smartphone flow of news with more than an automated feed? New York Times just moved beyond an automated feed last month because they put technologists in the newsroom. So I don't know if you looked at the new app, the New York Times app in the last 7-10 days. It's markedly different. You go through the airport and you got the signs say big data, they're going to come get you. And so buy our software. That's what they're saying. Little data is this whole sense of it's not the publisher or the editor or the ad director, anybody saying, oh, I don't get this stuff. You guys go figure it out, or show me what works, right? You need leaders in these enterprises that say, I'm running this business or I'm running this newsroom or whatever. Tell me what the customer response is. For on any side of the business, we've never had a business where you can have instantaneous response. And of course, the news business is completely different and advantaged over every other kind of business because what do? A constant flow of news with constant interaction. If I go to Amazon to buy a book today, I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon, but I might go there like 5 times a week for a few minutes, not very long. For the New York Times, I'm always on that site. Every time I'm touching that site, I am giving them information and feedback. So the old model is you get a monthly report, maybe a weekly report. Now you can know, and companies are doing this with consoles. There's a question of harnessing the data, but what exactly is happening? What is capturing people's attention? If you're running a business that is consultative at its root and is marketing services at its root, you're saying to the furniture store, hey, you know what? I'm watching your console this morning, and you're getting a lot of views on this new set of furniture you put on sale. I'm wondering how you're doing in terms of leads. Could be a pricing problem. We're doing great, wonderful, right? People are coming in when they're not buying. Well, maybe it's a pricing problem, or maybe we ought to do this kind of stuff. So that idea is just huge, and I really believe that in that 5-year scenario, that any business of any size that doesn't harness data on a regular, integrated daily basis basically won't survive. It is clearly people who are natively flexible, and the ability of newspaper companies to change out, unions or no unions, their workforces has been a continuing problem. The culture has held it back. If you had told me 20 years ago that a third of American or 30% of American newsrooms would be emptied out and the same cultural problems would largely be there, I'd say couldn't happen. We're not that stupid. But it largely has. And there's lots of examples of good culture change, but way too slow. So basically it's a mindset. Again, it's intelligence.
It should be a calling in newsrooms, as it was, to serve communities better. People don't need to be paid MBA salaries, but they do need to be paid better, and they need to feel valued and as if they have a future.